The entire history of humanity can sometimes depend on a single moment, on a single decision made by a single man in a room filled with cigarette smoke and fear. We are in June 1944. Europe is a fortress. For 5 long years, the Third Reich has built an impenetrable wall along the coast of France. The Atlantic Wall, a monster of concrete and steel with 15 Zero bunkers, machine gun nests, millions of landmines and underwater obstacles designed by a brilliant and brutal mind, Field Marshal Erwin Rommel. A killing machine waiting, silently, for the inevitable attack. On the other side of the English Channel, the response materializes. The largest invasion force ever assembled by man. It is not an army. It is a planet in motion. Almost 7,000 vessels, from majestic warships to small landing craft, form a floating city of steel. In the sky, 12,000 aircraft are ready to tear through the night. And on land, 2 million men, Americans, British, Canadians, Poles, Free French, each with the fate of the world in his pack. But this colossal force is paralyzed, not by the enemy, but by the weather. The worst storm in 20 years turns the channel into a cauldron of 6-meter waves. To launch the invasion would be suicide. To delay it for too long would be the end of the secret and the failure of the operation before it even began. In his headquarters, the Supreme Allied Commander, Dwight D. Eisenhower, stares into the abyss. He listens to his generals, Montgomery, Bradley, Ramsey, men whose tense faces reflect the enormity of the choice. The meteorologists give him a sliver, an almost insulting 36-hour window of bearable weather. It's a gamble with the soul of a generation. With a nod of his head, he seals everyone's fate. Okay, let's go. And for the men who are about to die, he writes an order of the day that would become immortal. You are about to embark upon the great crusade. The eyes of the world are upon you. As the real armada prepares, the greatest lie of the war is being told. Operation Fortitude, a ghost army of inflatable tanks and wooden planes, positioned in Kent, with fake radio transmissions and the legendary General Patton as its fictitious commander. The objective? To convince Hitler that the real attack will be at Pas-de-Calais, 240 kilometers away. It is a masterstroke that keeps Germany's most powerful panzer divisions away from Normandy, waiting for an attack that will never come. And on the ships, rocking violently in the darkness, the smell is of sea salt, vomit and fear. Thousands of young men, many who had never seen the sea, are crammed together, seasick, praying in silence. They check their weapons for the 10th time. They look at photos of their wives and girlfriends. They are the tip of freedom's spear, a spear about to crash against a wall of steel. In Eisenhower's pocket, the note no one would see. Our landings have failed. If any blame or fault attaches to the attempt, it is mine alone. The longest night in history had begun. The fleet set sail into the darkness. The world held its breath, waiting for dawn. The sound is not thunder. It is the sound of metal tearing metal, of concrete shattering. The naval barrage that was supposed to annihilate the German defenses largely misses its target, sinking into the soft sand miles inland. On the beaches of Normandy, the Atlantic Wall has barely been scratched. And the men of the German 352nd Infantry Division, veterans of the Eastern Front, whom Allied intelligence did not know were there, wait in their bunkers. They watch, patiently, as the steel tide approaches. Then, the moment comes. The ramps of the landing craft drop, and the world transforms into an inferno of sound and fury. There is no glory, no cinematic heroism, just the high-pitched buzz of the MG-42 machine guns, Hitler's saws, firing over 1,200 rounds per minute. For the first men of the American infantry on Omaha Beach, the beach is a 300-meter kill zone. Before they can feel the cold water in their boots, they are cut down. The water turns red. The air fills with screams and the smell of gunpowder. Men carrying over 40 kilos of equipment drown in a meter of water. Medics trying to save the wounded are killed alongside their patients. Officers die in the first seconds, leaving entire units leaderless, paralyzed on the blood-soaked sand. The plan, so carefully laid out in safe rooms in England, disintegrates in less than 10 minutes. It's a massacre. D-Day is about to fail, but then something happens. In that chaos, in that open-air slaughterhouse, desperate courage overcomes fear. Generals like Norman Cotter, amidst the fire, shout to their paralyzed men, "There are two kinds of people on this beach, those who are already dead and those who are going to die. Now get off your asses and move forward." Sergeants rally the survivors. Small groups acting on instinct begin to move. They realize the only chance to survive is to advance towards the machine guns. They use the bodies of their comrades as shields, crawling, inch by inch, towards the cliffs. It is no longer an invasion. It is a fight for survival. Man by man, they begin to climb, to breach the defenses, to fight with knives and grenades inside the trenches. They are no longer fighting for France. They are fighting for the man next to them. Stories like this are the heart of our work. If you believe that the memory of these sacrifices needs to be honored and that these lessons cannot be forgotten, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Your subscription allows us to continue bringing history to life. Now let's understand the true price of that courage. Victory in a war is not forged solely by the genius of generals or the precision of maps. It is bought with the most expensive currency there is, the lives of ordinary men in extraordinary situations. While hell unfolded on Omaha, on other beaches, Utah, Gold, Juneau, Sword, history was being written with different levels of blood and success, but the price was always paid. In the darkness, miles inland, the paratroopers of the 101st and 82nd Airborne Divisions fought solitary battles, isolated, hunting and being hunted in villages and swamps that would become sacred ground. But the most vital heroes of that day did not carry the most powerful rifles. They were the medics, men with a red cross painted on their helmets, a target for cynical snipers. Unarmed, they ran towards the screams, crawling under heavy fire to apply a tourniquet, to whisper a word of comfort to a young man watching his life drain away in the sand. Every life they saved was an act of defiance against the insanity of war, a miracle amidst the massacre. And there were the combat engineers, perhaps the most suicidal task of all. Their mission was to destroy Rommel's obstacles, the steel beams and mines that tore through the hulls of boats and the entrails of men. They worked in chest-deep water, with enemy fire concentrated on them, carrying explosives, trying to clear a path so that tanks and reinforcements could get through. For every small breach they opened in the Atlantic Wall, a dozen of them fell. They were the key to victory, and they paid for it with their lives. At the end of that single day, June 6, 1944, the bill came due. More than 4,400 Allied soldiers confirmed dead, thousands more wounded and missing, a number the mind can barely comprehend. It is not a statistic, it is a library of interrupted stories. They were farmers from Kansas, clerks from London, fishermen from Canada. They were young men who would never go home again, who would never know their children, who became the foundation upon which the freedom of Europe was rebuilt. Their heroism was not in the absence of fear. It was in acting despite paralyzing fear, in taking one more step towards the enemy, in sacrificing their future for a world they hoped would be better. As night fell on June 6, 1944, the sound of battle began to change. The desperate roar of combat on the beaches gives way to the continuous industrial noise of war. The beachheads, one with blood, are secure. Cranes, trucks, tanks, and hundreds of thousands of men begin to land on French soil. The largest amphibious operation in history had succeeded. The Atlantic Wall, the great symbol of the Reich's invincibility, had been breached. An uncrossable crack now divided Fortress Europe. For the German High Command, it was a blow from which they would never recover. Deceived by Operation Fortitude, Hitler and his generals kept their most powerful panzer divisions stationary, waiting for a phantom attack at Pas-de-Calais, while the real invasion consolidated. When they finally realized their mistake, it was too late. The door to France was wide open, and Hitler's nightmare of a two-front war was now a brutal reality. The Red Army was crushing his forces in the east, and now a new front was opening in the west. D-Day was not the end of the war, far from it. It was the beginning of the end. It was the day that made the final victory possible. From then on, 11 months of brutal fighting would follow through the fields and cities of France, Belgium, all the way to the heart of Germany. Battles like the Falaise Pocket and the Battle of the Bulge would still test the limits of human courage and endurance. The road to Berlin would be long, bloody, and paved with more sacrifices. But it all started there on those beaches. Today, anyone who walks on the sands of Normandy finds a peace that belies the violence of its past. But one only has to look at the hills to see the cemeteries. Endless rows of white crosses and stars of David, perfectly aligned, marking the graves of young men who gave everything they had. They did not fight for conquest or for glory. They fought for an ideal, that the world should not live on its knees. The legacy of D-Day is not in history books or stone monuments. It is in the air we breathe on a free continent, a silent testament that ordinary men, when called by history, can achieve the impossible. They gave us all of our tomorrows, and our only obligation is to never forget. If this video touched you, and if you want to ensure that more stories like D-Day are told with the respect and depth they deserve, I ask you to do 3 things. Leave a like so this story reaches more people, share it with someone who needs to know this legacy, and most importantly, subscribe to our channel. It is your subscription that fuels our mission. Thank you for watching.